Good evening, students. Welcome back to previous year's questions analysis by Baji Rao IAS Academy. So today is 23rd October 2023. So today we have a set of questions, previous year questions, and we will discuss them in a detailed way. So the first question which we are going to discuss today is it is about the geomorphic processes. The question is, our Earth is playfield of two opposite geomorphic processes. Now in this question, we will understand what exactly the geomorphic processes and how Earth is a playfield of these two geomorphic processes. Now, before you start this answer, first define what constitutes the geomorphic processes. So the term geomorphic originally refers to or it relates to a landscape or other natural features on the Earth's surface. So if you look at the structure of Earth, so it consists of crust, mantle and core. So therefore, the geomorphic term relates to the landscape or the natural features on the Earth's surface, that is on the crust part of the Earth. So the forces causing physical and chemical changes on the surface of the Earth are known as geomorphic processes. So whether it could be the weathering process or weathering process is related to the soil formation and also formation of mountains, rocks. So all these geographical features and geographical phenomenon on planet Earth related to these geomorphic processes. So all changes that take place under the influence of certain forces. Okay, so these forces on the surface of the Earth, they usually work continuously. So when they work continuously on the surface of the Earth, that lead to the changes over a period of time on the surface of Earth. For example, if we look at Himalayas, they are known as youngest fold mountains. So they are known as youngest fold mountains is because they are still forming, and the Indian plate has been colliding with the Eurasian plate. So as a result of this, there were mountains formed. The folded mountains were formed on the northern border of India. So this is also part of a geomorphic process. So this can be categorized as a geomorphic process. However, these forces working over Earth's surface are actually known as exogenic forces. So for example, there's a crust. Okay, this is crust, and if these changes are taking place on the surface of the earth or above the crust, they're called as exogenic forces. So however, so these forces have been taking place inside the surface of the earth. Okay, this is crust, or inside the surface of the earth, they are called as endogenic forces. So geomorphic processes are two types. So they are called as exogenic forces, so they take place on the surface of the earth, and endogenic forces, they take place inside the surface of the earth. Now first you have defined what exactly geomorphic process is. Now in your answer, when you write a table like this, when you write a flow chart, a tree diagram like this, it would be more impactful. Now, as I have earlier said, geomorphic processes can be categorized into endogenic forces and exogenic forces. So, endogenic forces used to take place inside the Earth's surface. On the other hand, the exogenic forces takes place on the surface of Earth. Now, if you look at the endogenic forces, they are further divided into two types. So, one is diastrophism, and second, sudden movements. So, sudden movements like earthquakes, volcanoes, so they are categorized as endogenic, and the sudden movements. So, on the other hand, the diastrophism involves the gradual movement. So, diastrophism further classified into epirogenic and orogenic. So in the epirogenic, so the movement is either upward or downward. Okay, So this is otherwise called as sinking. On the other hand, the orogenic. So orogenic usually involves formation of mountains, formation of ranges. So this usually involves compression and also fusion. Right now, after that, we also have a exogenic factors. Okay, so in exogenic factors, we talk about weathering, erosion. So weathering either could be physical weathering, chemical weathering, or biological weathering. So on the other hand, the erosion involves the factors which are responsible for erosion of topsoil include ice, that is a glacial mediated weathering process or erosion process. So river water also leads to the erosion of the soil, and also sea, wind, underground water. So they are the major exogenic forces which usually led to the erosion of the surface. So these all factors are considered as the exogenic factors, and these factors are considered as the endogenic factors. Okay, now, so what are these endogenic movements? So earlier I have said the endogenic movements usually take place inside the surface of the earth. Okay, so these are primarily emanating from within earth. So as I have told you that earth has a crust, and above the crust the exogenic factors, exogenic processes used to take place, or inside or within the crust the forces which emanate within the earth are called as endogenic factors. Okay, so endogenic factors I have already told you, earthquake formation, volcanoes are examples of endogenic movements, right? So the earth movements are the endogenic movements are primarily two types. So they are diastrophism and sudden movements. So what is diastrophism? What is diastrophism? So the processes inside or within the surface of the earth, so they move, elevate, and build up portions of the earth's crust. Okay, so earth's crust is a uppermost layer of earth's surface. Now all processes that move, elevate, and build up the portions of the earth crust, so they come under the category of diastrophism. Okay, so now diastrophism involves both orogenic processes and also epeirogenic processes. So when we talk about the orogenic processes, orogeny is a mountain building process. Okay, so this is a mountain building process. So therefore it involves mountain building, and the mountain building usually takes place through severe folding and affecting long narrow belts of the earth's crust. Now if you look at the Himalayas, and even if you look at Vindhyas and Satpuras, so all those are examples of orogenic processes. Now in Vindhyas Satpuras, there was a fracture, and through that fracture, the Narmada river flows. So, in a similar way, there is also epeirogenic processes. So, these epeirogenic processes usually involves uplift or warping of large parts of Earth's crust. So, thus, it is a continent building process. So both orogenic processes and epeirogenic processes involves, they are called as a diastrophism. They are part of diastrophism. Diastrophism usually means, so the changes that used to take place on the surface of the earth. Now in the epeirogenic processes, they actually build the continents. It is not the mountain building process, rather it usually involves the continental building process. So therefore, they act along the radius, and thus they are also called as radial movements. Now this is the in the endogenic movements, diastrophism is one part, and the second part of endogenic movement is sudden movements. So these are not gradual movements. So they used to take place suddenly, right? So in sudden movements, they very often they cause a considerable deformation over a short span of time. So these sudden movements usually create a large change. Okay, so a considerable deformation over a very short period of time. For example, when you look at earthquakes, when you look at the volcanic eruptions, so how they bring a deformation over a particular area, and in a very short span of time. For example, an earthquake with a magnitude of just 7.5 on Richter scale would bring a massive destruction and damage to that particular area. So we have seen that in recently a Turkey earthquake. So therefore, sudden movements bring a considerable deformation over that particular area. Now, after that, we should also talk about the exogenic forces. Now, what are these exogenic forces? I have already told you these exogenic forces used to take place on the surface of the earth. Okay, they are used to take place on the surface of the outer part of the crust, but not within the earth's surface. So these exogenic forces are direct result of stress induced in the earth materials. For example, temperature, altitude, latitude, so all these factors influence, so they are act as exogenic forces. So they may face shear stresses and that break rocks and other earth materials. So over a period of time they cause molecular stress and due to the temperature changes. Okay, so the exogenic forces, as I have told you, involves both weathering and erosion. So please remember, these weathering and erosion takes place on the surface of the earth. Okay, so this weathering involves the formation of soil. Weathering is formation of soil. So weathering can be further classified into physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering as well. On the other hand, there are several factors which lead to the soil erosion. Okay, so the factors which are responsible for soil erosion are given here. So ice, river water, sea, wind, and underground water, so they are largely responsible for the erosion of soil, and that can be considered as a exogenic process. Okay, now these exogenic processes, as I have told you, are a result of shear stress. So, they are a result of a stress that used to take place on the surface of the earth. So, all the exogenic geomorphic processes are covered under the general term denudation. Okay, so they are just covered under the term called denudation. So, this denudation involves weathering, mass wasting, or movement of topsoil, and erosion and transportation. So all these factors are considered part of denudation. Okay, so weathering, as I have told you, that weathering is soil formation. So along with soil formation, mass wasting, movements, erosion, and transportation are all part of a denudation. Okay, so now what are the denudational processes? Now, so initially the denudation process involves weathering. Okay, so weathering means a formation of a soil. Now from the parent rock the soil forms, and this process is called as weathering. Now after weathering, denudation process also involves mass wasting and erosion and transportation. So erosion and transportation usually takes place through kinetic energy. Okay, so the movement of a topsoil based on the kinetic energy, and also the mass movements usually takes place because of the gravitational force. So for example, yesterday I have told you about landslides. So landslide can also be considered as a mass movement, and the landslide usually takes place under the influence of gravitational forces. Now, when we talk about weathering, so weathering, physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. So therefore, it usually comes under the gravitational, molecular stresses, and chemical actions also. So all these factors combined, so they determine the weathering process. So the denudational processes their driving forces are described in this picture. So when you write up an answer for this question, so you should write these flowcharts as well. So they will add value to your answer. Now, in the conclusion, you just emphasize on the importance of these geomorphic processes, both exogenic processes and endogenic processes, because they continuously bring change on the surface of the earth. So these changes are very important. They make earth more and more dynamic and suitable, make the planet suitable for the life. So even though they very often come across disasters, for example volcanoes and landslides, earthquakes, so even though they very often bring with them these disasters, but they very often bring changes on the surface of the earth. They change the structure and make the planet earth more and more dynamic. So in order to sustain the life on the planet of earth, these processes, both geomorphic processes, are very important. So therefore they are called it is called as a play field of opposite forces of both exogenic and endogenic forces. So why it is a play field of opposite forces? So as I have told you, the exogenic forces processes used to take place on the surface of the earth, and endogenic processes takes place on inside or within the surface of the earth. Okay, so this is all about this question. So the next question is with respect to Indian society, right? Now this question, how far has linguistic diversity has helped in strengthening Indian unity? So as we all know that India has several languages. In fact, Indian constitution itself recognized 22 languages. So they are part of 8th schedule. Okay. So Indian constitution itself recognized 22 languages. So apart from these 22 languages, there are around 1500 languages, okay, so spoken in different parts of our country. So in this context, the question has been asked, how far has linguistic diversity helped in strengthening Indian unity? So how the linguistic diversity has resulted in strengthening of national unity? Now in this question you need to define, so what exactly the linguistic diversity, or you can briefly define what is being asked in the question, and then first write how linguistic diversity helped in strengthening Indian unity, and what are the concerns, the present day concerns with the linguistic diversity, or increased emphasis on language. Okay, and you should also suggest a way forward and then conclude this answer. So this is how you can approach this answer. So firstly, so what you write, so India is a land of diverse languages. So yes, we know that India is a land of diverse languages. So majority of Indian people, they usually speak Indo-Aryan languages. So there are multiple types of languages. For example, Indo-Aryan languages. Sanskrit is known as Indo-Aryan language. Hindi is known as Indo-Aryan language. So on the other hand, there are several Dravidian languages also. So Dravidian languages like Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu. So they are known as Dravidian languages, including Kannada. So 75% of India's population usually speak Indo-Aryan language. So on the other hand, just 20% of India's population speak the Dravidian languages. So apart from this data, 22 languages, so they are recognized as a scheduled languages, and they are recognized by the Indian constitution. So apart from the above given data, there were several dialectics which are in mutual coexistence in a contiguous space. So India has a rich diversity, and language diversity is one of the cog in the entire wheel of diversity. Now, as you have introduced this answer briefly, then just write a heading that linguistic diversity and national integration, how linguistic diversity contributes to national integration. So as we have read that after independence there was a demand for the formation of states on the basis of language. So during that time, during 1950s and 1960s, in fact, the national leadership was feared that the linguistic diversity would lead to subnationalism. So subnationalism very often associated with threats like secessionism. So therefore, they were skeptical of the formation of states based on language. So however, in the year 1956, Andhra Pradesh was formed as a first state on the linguistic basis. So formation of linguistic states such as Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra and Punjab. So these states were formed based on the linguistic criteria, linguistic basis. So this further strengthened India's federal feature, and it has also prevented the secessionist tendencies. Okay, because generally what happens was in case of Andhra, the erstwhile Andhra region was part of Madras Presidency. So in Madras Presidency, the language, Telugu language was not given adequate importance. Rather, Tamil was increasingly emphasized by the Madras Presidency. So this has resulted in a sense of deprivation and alienation from the people of Andhra region. So they have demanded separate state from Madras Presidency. So if we do not consider a separate state for the Andhra region, so then that could definitely lead to the secessionist tendencies. And if secessionist tendencies, a feeling of deprivation and isolation has developed among the people of a particular region, that could lead to the secessionist tendencies. However, the union leadership has responded in a much better manner, and given they have created new states on linguistic basis. So that has strengthened the federal feature, and it has also prevented the secessionist tendencies. So thereby maintaining overall national unity. Next, the linguistic diversity so very often shows respect for regional sentiments. So different regions, people people of that particular area speak different languages. So therefore, it has resulted in a respect for regional sentiments, including for minority and tribal languages. So, in fact, there were several constitutional provisions which are providing protection and they are safeguarding the languages of those regions. For example, when you look at Article 29, so it talks about whenever there's a minority, so they have the right to protect their culture, their language. And Article 30 speaks about the right to establish and administer educational institutions by the minorities. So both linguistic minorities and religious minorities are being recognized by the Indian Constitution. So therefore, along with Article 29, 30, Article 347 and 350, they were also created to protect and safeguard the language. So therefore, overall, it has resulted in promoting harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood among us all the people. Now, so after that, even if the diversity in languages, even if there's a huge or rich diversity of languages, they are primarily derived from the Indo-Aryan languages or Dravidian languages. So yes, no doubt about that. India is a land with a wide variety of languages, but these languages are primarily derived from Indo-Aryan languages or Dravidian languages. Okay, so as I've already told you, so what comes under Indo-Aryan languages and what are part of the Dravidian languages. So therefore, this sense of common origin of languages has also promoted unity. So these languages were not originated from a wide variety of uh, you know uh, Languages. So they are just originated from two languages, that is they are Dravidian languages and Indo-Aryan languages. So this in a way promoted a sense of common origin of languages, and it has also promoted unity among the communities. So third, you very often come across the word English. Okay, so this is a modern term where English and Hindi is being used in the conversations. In modern day conversations, both in English and Hindi is being used, and it is very often called as English. So nowadays, English has become a bridge language. So it has been connecting different regions and people from different parts of a country, whether it is Northeast India, South India, and Northern India. So all the people have been interacting. It has become a common bridge language between these parts of different parts of our country. Since we have different languages, so therefore, it has become all India common vocabulary. English has become a all India common vocabulary. So yes, we have understood how linguistic diversity has led to the unity and strengthening integrity of the nation. But what are the issues? What are the concerns in this regard? So the issues, the first and foremost issue with increasing emphasis on language. So it has been further giving impetus to increasing regionalism and parochialism. So increasing regionalism and parochialism is not in the best interest of national unity. For example, so there was always a backlash from people of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu about the forceful imposition of Hindi language. Okay, so they don't want that the Hindi language to be imposed on them. So in fact, the forceful imposition of the Pakistan way of life, Pakistani Urdu language on Bangladesh, that led to the separation of Bangladesh. So that was previously known as East Pakistan from the West Pakistan. So therefore, over a period of time, what happens is it leads to the increasing regionalism and parochial attitudes, because the people of different linguistic groups who are concentrated in a country like India, they used to think everything from their own interest. So even in terms of language, in terms of region, so they used to prefer their own interests rather than their national interest. So this in a way undermines the consideration of national issues, and this will causes the parochial feelings. So the parochial feeling is nothing but looking at everything from the interest of a particular region or a particular state. Now, secondly, the increasing emphasis on language or language diversity also comes with a demand for separate states based on language. Okay, so there were many instances in India after independence that there were several demands for creation of a separate state based on language. So, if the demand for creation of a separate state would further continue, this would disrupt the federal structure. This would disrupt the federal structure, and this would even lead to the secessionist tendencies in different parts of our country. And even if the demand for separate states have been increasing on the linguistic lines, this will further create problems for the concerned state as well as center. So center in terms of a creation of more and more states on the basis of language. The concerned state, it will lead to the regular protests, law and order problems, and disruption in the normal day-to-day activities of the people. So therefore, a demand for separate states on linguistic basis would be a challenge if language is increasingly emphasized. And third, persecution of linguistic minorities. So fortunately, we have not seen any instances of persecution of linguistic minorities. So minorities based on language. So however, this we can observe uh, uh, in East Pakistan, the erstwhile East Pakistan, that is now Bangladesh. So the linguistic minorities, the Bengali speaking people in East Pakistan were persecuted by the people of West Pakistan. So that has led to the separate nation of Bangladesh. Right. So this can perpetuate separatism and threaten national integration. So you can mention the example of the liberation of Bangladesh because of the forced persecution by the Pakistani uh, uh, Pakistani people on East Pakistan. Now, after that, you should mention a brief way forward. So, what should be the way forward? So, way forward should be earlier we have a state reorganization commission. So, there was a state reorganization commission. So, why it was formed? The state reorganization commission was formed to understand the consequences of the formation of states based on language, whether it is good for the national integration or it could have any negative repercussions. And in on similar lines, we need to form a new state reorganization commission so that it could invite suggestions, arguments against and against division of a particular states or creation of a new states on linguistic basis. And we should also strengthen our criminal justice system. Okay, so when we strengthen the criminal justice system, we could be able to prevent the persecution of linguistic minorities. So fortunately, there was no instances of linguistic minorities persecution in India. So in conclusion, you can write about the quality of Indian values such as accommodation and tolerance. Yes, India followed these values like accommodation and tolerance. So therefore, there's no doubt that linguistic diversity promotes national unity. However, any attempt to forcefully impose religion of one particular group, forcefully enforce the common language. For example, Hindi is spoken as a common language across the country or majority part of the country. So, if we impose Hindi forcefully, that could come with a negative impact on overall national integration. Okay, because still there is no consensus, there is no agreement uh, on the part of the people in different parts of our country that Hindi should be a common language. So, therefore, there should not be any attempt to impose Hindi language on people who don't want their language to be Hindi, because they often feel that Hindi imposition in their respective regions would lead to the less priority to their native languages, whether it is Kannada, Tamil, or Malayalam. Okay, so this is how you can conclude this answer. So the next question is with respect to Vijayanagara Empire. See, Vijayanagara Empire is very important for prelims and mains examination. So you very often see at least one question in UPSC prelims about Vijayanagara Empire. So this question is particularly about Hampi, a city of Vijayanagara Empire. So this Hampi city is known as the city of each stone because there were several temples which were constructed, which were built with stone itself. So therefore, in this context, we need to explain the site's architectural and historical significance. So what is the historical and architectural significance of this particular site? We need to explain. Now, before you are going to explain the historical and architectural significance of the city, first and foremost, describe what is Hampi. So Hampi is in fact known as a city that is etched in stone. Okay, so Hampi city is a vast and sprawling complex of ruins. So that is a home to impressive and beautiful architecture in India. So the Hampi is now recognized as a UNESCO's World Heritage Site. UNESCO World Heritage Site. So the reason for this recognition is because it is most impressive and beautiful architecture in India. So it contains. So in fact, the city of Hampi was the capital city of Vijayanagara Empire. So in fact, the Vijayanagara Empire in south that was flourished in 14th and 16th century was one of the most powerful and largest empire in South India. So that was established on the banks of river Tungabhadra. Okay, so this city was flourished in 14th and 16th centuries. So during this time, Hampi was recognized, or Hampi was a major center of art, culture, and trade. So not just the temples were constructed with a rich architecture, but Hampi is also known as a major center for art, culture, and trade in 14th and 15th centuries. So the major architectural style that we can observe uh, at Hampi is a blend of Hindu and Islamic influences. So the temples which were constructed by Vijayanagara rulers also have a Islamic influence. So therefore we can observe a blend of Hindu and Islamic influences. So the temples were characterized by their elaborate carvings. So on the walls of a temples, there were elaborate carvings and there were also sculptures. So the palaces of Vijayanagara rulers and other secular buildings are known for their imposing gateways and courtyards. So they also have an imposing gateways and courtyards. Now in this context, we need to understand the architectural significance of Hampi. So what is the architectural significance of Hampi? So in Hampi, so we can observe the different traditional architectural styles. For example, there was a centralized temple with external ancillaries. Okay, if you look at the Vijayanagara style of temple construction, so you can observe a centralized temple. So along with the centralized temple, there are external ancillaries also. So it is not just a temple. So along with the temple, there were also external ancillaries. So the religious buildings are scattered into small units. So each with its own importance and function. So the religious buildings which are constructed across these temples are known as a are scattered into a small units, and each unit have its own importance and function. So the architectural features of Hampi, they are not just religious in nature. However, there are also secular places. So it constitutes both religious and secular places. For example, so if you look at the ruins of Hampi, so now the Hampi was damaged. Okay, so it was it at its last phases. So the ruins of Hampi can be divided into areas such as sacred area, intermediate irrigated valley, urban core, palace area, and suburban centers. So these palaces were further divided into different parts, and this is the second architectural feature of the Hampi temples. Now, after that, the Vijayanagara rulers in their architecture they have widely used the local materials, the locally available materials. So, for example, they have extensively used granite, which is locally available. So, in most of the monuments that we see in Hampi, so we can observe the locally available granite. So they have polished and furnished the granite slabs. So they were most extensively used in exterior walls and entrances of temples. Now after that, so they have also used non-indigenous styles. So the architectural styles or architectural features, so which are not originally indigenous to that particular region. So for example, we can also observe the Islamic style of temple architecture such as arches, domes, and stucco decorations, lotus palaces, elephant stables, and queen's bath. So these are all containing the Islamic architectural features. So they have also used the non-indigenous styles. And the last aspect of the architectural feature is water harvesting structures are also a major feature of Hampi architecture. So water bodies like tanks, stone canals, drains, aqueducts and wells. So they are all were part of a Hampi architecture. So these are the significant aspects of architecture at Hampi. Okay. So next we need to write about the historical significance of Hampi. So what is the historical significance of Hampi? So first and foremost, uh, so the dynasties which ruled over the region, the Hampi region, so they have left an indelible mark. So we can mention example of Vijayanagara style of temple architecture. So that has relied on natural resources. So what does this mean? That earlier we have learned that temples at Hampi, they were used locally available material. So therefore they have used the natural resources. While on the other hand, so different other dynasties have used elements like chalked schist rock, so they are suitable for ornate carvings. So even though the temple walls and pillars have rich carvings and sculptures at Hampi, so they have used the locally available natural resources. So this is a first historical significance of Hampi architecture. Secondly, we can observe the wide variety of diversity in architectural features of at Hampi, because we have learned that the Vijayanagara rulers in their architectural style they have included the Islamic features, the Hindu style of temple architecture. So they were, even though they were primarily Hindu rulers, so Vijayanagara they were these rulers, Vijayanagara rulers were primarily Hindu rulers. So they used to have a different linguistic, uh, you know different people, I mean people from different faiths, they used to live in the city of Hampi. Okay. So adherents of different religious traditions, they resided in city. And the Hampi and the Vijayanagara empire as a whole attracted the foreign tourists, foreign historians, because of this architectural grandeur of Hampi. So you can mention examples such as European and Persian travelers, Niccolo di Canti, Abdul Razak. So they paid the visit to Vijayanagara Empire. So this is primarily because of the architectural grandeur at Hampi in particular, and Vijayanagara Empire at in general. So overall, they provide vivid descriptions of life at the capital during the 15th and 16th centuries. So yes, so you have described the overall historical significance and the architectural significance of Hampi. And this is how you can describe this answer. This is how you need to structure this answer. So first observe what is being asked in the question. So what is given in the question, so and divide the question into different parts and address each part with the relevant content, and that is how you can score good marks. So in conclusion, so you can write that because of this architectural grandeur, this was rightly recognized by UNESCO as World Heritage Site. Now Hampi is being recognized as a World Heritage Site. So this is how you can conclude this answer. So, okay. So the next question, it is about the Mansabdari system during Mughal rulers or under Mughal rulers. So what is the Mansabdari system and what is its significance? Because this question is very often asked in prelims and mains examinations also. So therefore, in this context, we will try and understand what is Mansabdari system under the Mughal rulers. So what exactly its significance? So first and foremost, you need to define the Mansabdari system. So what is Mansabdari system? So Mansabdari system is usually a grading system. So grading system means it usually grade the officers under the Mughal rule. or the under the Mughal ruler. So therefore it is a grading system, and this grading system used by the Mughal rulers to fix the rank and salary of Mansabdar. So under each Mughal ruler there were Mansabdars, and this Mansabdari system was used to grade the officials, fix the rank and the salary. Okay, so they were usually nobles and they have occupied various high positions in the administration of Mughal Empire. Okay, so they were nobles. So they were appointed and dismissed by the Mughal emperor himself. So Mughal emperor have the direct control over these Mansabdars. So a Mughal emperor can appoint them or can dismiss them. Now, who was Mansabdars? So, as I have told you, as we have learned about the Mansabdari system, what exactly is? So, it is just a grading system under the Mughal rulers, and the Mansabdari system is used for fixing rank and salary of employees. Now, who were Mansabdars? So, Mansabdars were officers under the Mughal administration. So, as we have learned that Mansabdars were nobles in the administration of Mughal Empire. So, therefore, they were officers. And those nobles who joined the Mughal service were enrolled as Mansabdars. So, Mansabdars were nobles, and those nobles who are joined in Mughal service or Mughal administration, so they are enrolled as Mansabdars first. So the term Mansabdar usually refers to an individual who holds a Mansab, or otherwise called as rank. So these Mansabdars were appointed on all civil and military positions. So there is no separation that the Mansabdars are only belong to the civil administration or the military administration. So the Mansabdars used to be, they were appointed in all civil and military positions. So these Mansabdars were also liable for transfer. Okay, they were even transferred from one branch to the other branch of the administration. For example, so one Mansabdar can be transferred from civil administration to military administration, and vice versa also happens. So this is the brief description about the Mansabdari system. So you are not expected to write this much of a content. You can write 2-3 points about Mansabdars. So first introduce, and then you can write who was Mansabdars. So 2-3 points under this heading. Now, if you look at the Mansabdars, the total number of Mansabdars under Akbar's rule were 1800 Mansabdars. So, on the other hand, during Aurangzeb, the number of Mansabdars were increased manifold. Okay, the total number of Mansabdars under Aurangzeb become 14,500. So, a huge increase in the number of Mansabdars. So, in fact, such a huge increase is one such factor which led to the fall of Mansabdari system under the Aurangzeb. So, because there were a huge number of Mansabdars, so the revenue collected by these Mansabdars was not sufficient to pay them salaries. So, on the other hand, when you look at the Mansabdaris, the number of Mansabdaris under Akbar, it is just 1800. So because of this reason, so the revenue which is being collected by the Mansabdars is paid to the those Mansabdars as salaries. On the other hand, because of huge number of Mansabdars, the salaries were not enough. The revenue collected was not enough to pay salaries to these Mansabdars. Now, if you look at the structure of the Mansabdari system, so there was a dual representation of Mansab. Okay, so if you look at the structure was actually a dual representation. So, firstly, you can divide the Mansabdari system into Jat and Savar. So, this is important, please remember. So, Mansabdari system is divided into Jat and Savar. Now, this Jat is indicated the rank of the particular officer. in the administration. So this jat also indicated the salary of the mansabdar. So it indicates both rank and salary of the mansabdar. Okay, so this is known as jat. So on the other hand, the other term called savar. So what exactly is the savar? So savar is represented the cavalryman, the cavalry rank. Okay, so it actually denotes that the number of horses and cavalrymen maintained by savar. So it is like a military term. So how many number of horses and cavalrymen are being maintained by each savar is uh, is something that is each mansabdar is determined by savar. So a jat is about salary and rank of the officer, and savar is about to denote the number of horses and cavalrymen held by each mansabdar. Okay, so next, when you talk about the salaries, so how the salaries were paid to these mansabdars? So salaries were paid in both cash and land as well. For example, if you look at the mansabdars, so their salaries were incommensurate with their ranks. For example, a person with a higher rank, he paid higher salaries, and a person with a lower rank, he paid less salary. Secondly, so the mansabdars, so who used to receive payment in the form of land, he is known as jagirdar. Okay, so jagir is a term for land. So therefore, a person who used to receive payment through land, he was known as jagirdar. So basically, these jagirdars were given the right to collect the revenue from a piece of land. So yes, a few mansabdars were paid through land. Okay, so they were paid through land, and they were called as jagirdars. And these jagirdars are entrusted with the task of collecting revenue from a particular piece of land. Secondly, there were another category of mansabdars who used to receive payments through cash. So they were known as nagdi. Now, other thing you have to understand is that the post of mansabdar is not hereditary. Okay, so this is not hereditary. Hereditary means it is like a general succession from father to son. So it is not based on hereditary, rather it is based on merit. Generally, nobles were part of the mansabdari system. However, what led to the fall of mansabdari system? So why mansabdari system was failed ultimately under the uh, Aurangzeb? So as we have already learned that the number of mansabdars under Akbar were just around 1800. So on the other hand, when you look at Aurangzeb, so the number of mansabdars were increased to around 14,500. So this is a very huge number of mansabdars, and such a huge number of mansabdars. So the kingdom should also pay them, salaries, either cash or land. So when you maintain such a huge number of mansabdars, you need to pay a large sum of cash and land to those mansabdars. So this is one such factor that led to the fall of mansabdari system. Okay, so the increase in the mansabdars during the Aurangzeb regime, so that has become 14,500. So this has led to the Jagirdari and agrarian crisis. Okay, so this has also led to the agrarian crisis over a period of time. So because the primary task of these Jagirdars was to collect revenue from a particular piece of land, and if they continue to extract those revenues without a good agricultural product produce, that led to the agrarian crisis. Okay, so however, during the urban Akbar's reign, the system worked near perfect. So this was so perfect. So the revenue collected by the mansabdar from the jagirs, so they are usually transferred to the emperor, and the revenue which is being collected is enough to pay the salaries to these mansabdars. So on the other hand, it is completely different when it comes to Aurangzeb. because during the Aurangzeb era, the revenue which is being collected by mansabdars for the government was not enough to pay them salaries. So this ultimately led to the fall of the mansabdari system. Okay, so this is how you can write a note on the mansabdari system, as we have described the mansabdari system, who was the mansabdars, and what is the responsibility structure and salaries, and what led to the fall of the mansabdari system. Okay, so this is all for today. In the coming lectures we will discuss few more previous years questions, and just try to understand those questions, so that you can get to know how can we structure the answer based on the question, how can we write introduction and conclusion. Okay, so thank you so much.